Happy New Year, and welcome to this first meeting of the Beach Stewardship Committee. I'd like to call this meeting to order. And would you please join me with the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Could we have our roll call?
Member Welch.
Here.
Member Stevens.
Here.
Member Panic.
Here.
Vice Chair Kurzman.
Here.
Chair Rothenberger.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. We have a little business to do before we get started, and that is to first recognize Karen Marriott and Betty Resnitzky, who were on this board but are now commissioners. And we thank them for their service and wish them well in their endeavor. And we also have two new members today, John Stevens and Brad Panic. Would you guys like to say a few words, introduce yourself?
Yes, my name's John Stevens. My wife Nancy and I moved down to the area in 2020. We're very involved in beach preservation and wildlife activities, and looking forward to serving on the board.
Great. Thank you, John. Brad?
Brad Panic. My wife and I moved here about 2 years ago as well. Treasure Island before that, so been in the area for years. We own a business here. Our daughter is going to school here, so just very interested in making the city the best it can be.
Great. Thank you, Brad.
Yeah.
And welcome. First thing we have this morning is a presentation. Is that correct?
It appears that they're not having.
They're not here yet. Okay.
Have to skip over that.
Well, let's go to approval of the agenda.
I would like to mention that there were several items that I'd like to add to the agenda with your approval. I've handed out the email that I sent to IACO with my suggestions, and she had indicated that they would be on the agenda, and perhaps they are, because there is a Beach Stewardship Committee item here. But I provided a clarification of what those three items are, and provided a little flavor to them. And I think it's important to let everybody understand a little more clarity on what the three items are. The first item is that, as we discussed at the last meeting, beach stewardship is two things. It's chartered with beach nourishment and anything to protect the public beaches. So the first item, I think, of most urgency is that there's a matter before in this room this evening before the City Commission, which potentially does have impact on public beaches. And so one item was to discuss anything that we might want to suggest to the City Commission to give to their toolkit with regard to conditions they might want to consider for conditional use permits, or anything in particular for that particular item. The second, and then possibly, a member or members, present that this evening, or communicate in some other way. The second agenda item was to more formalize what was discussed at the last meeting, which was a process where we would get input and information about things coming to the City Commission so that we could provide input. Because in this past quarter, we've received, at least I've received, nothing. And so perhaps we need to do some more formal process. So the other agenda item was to maybe do something along the lines of what the Historical Commission did, And I've talked to Matthew as well, to come up with some other means to make it easier for staff and everyone to know what's recognized. So that would be the other agenda item. And then the third agenda item was to make a request of the City Commission to help with an analysis of deeds and surveys, essentially in the larger district, or from Upham Beach to the county park, and determine ownership and right-of-ways on the beach and access ways. Because there was mention at a recent City Commission meeting of a company that had expertise in that area, and also the city had gathered a lot of those deeds. And I've seen paperwork that shows exception pages from some properties, but not others. And it's important to understand what's out there so that we can sort of get a handle on this before more barricades are put up, or so that people know where they really have access. And so it was a request to have an agenda item to ask the City Commission to avail themselves of that company or another company to get a handle on those surveys and make them available to figure that out. So that was the third agenda item.
Okay. I think the second agenda item that you mentioned, we're going to cover under item 5.
I wasn't sure which was which, yeah.
Okay, I think that's pretty much wrapped up in that.
So then maybe we just need to add to, because I know Ayoko's, I'm not quite sure what happened then, because Ayoko's email had said that all my items were going to be added to the agenda, and I'm not quite sure what the process is, where the other two went, or who would have had, veto authority. I mean, I know we can't talk, so I don't know.
So
I thought maybe they all were built into that, or?
let me describe how the situation went down. You had given me your items. They were quite lengthy. I tried to summarize them, and I did put them on there, and it was based on the advice, because of the length of all of your concerns, that Matthew told me just to put this thing down there, resolution regarding concerns affecting the beaches. That's why it was so quickly summarized like that.
And on that point, Chair, if I may, it is our position that the agendas are a board decision, right? And leading up to the agenda, which I believe is published 7 days before, to get individual items from board members that have not been discussed by the board and approved for the agenda is not the way that these things should go. In my opinion, before we end this meeting today, every board member should say, this is what I want to see on the next agenda. You get a consensus from the board, and then it's very clear what's on the next agenda. But individual board members, the way to do it, and the commission does it all the time, is what we're doing right now, right? When it comes to changes to the agenda, if there's something that you want to add, you add it, the board approves it, and then you move on, because these are always board decisions on what's on the agenda. So to your point, I think the resolution can do a bunch of things, right? I think, Chair, you made a good point on item 2 for Member Kurtzman, but I mean, the resolution can include the deeds and survey work that you want to do as well. I mean, it can be as broad as you want, as narrow as you want. So in my opinion, I think that item alone handled most of Mr. Kurtzman's email, with the exception of what's happening tonight. If you guys want, as a board, a member to show up and express some concerns or some suggestions from the board in totality, then that's something that can be discussed today. But I was the one that made the decision. So there wasn't a veto power or anything like that. This is something that everything you guys discuss is as a whole board, not as individuals.
May I just add or respond to that, being that, for instance, none of us had any input into the OSHA Rescue Alliance. I'm happy they're here or will be here. And all of these things that come out are suggestions. And given that we're quarterly, when you look at the 3 items, none of these could have been forecasted last meeting. I did not know that in January we would have the City Commission meeting where they decided and announced this company that did title work. I did not know at the last meeting that nothing would come to us this last quarter and have the need for this resolution. And I did not know last quarter that we would have this need that nobody would come to us with this City Commission meeting for this evening and ask for our input. And so that's why I had to, I waited until this point to make those suggestions. So, maybe I could have done an emergency meeting, but, I was just trying to do what I could. So.
Understood. So, Chair, at this point, I think there's a motion on on the floor, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe Mr. Kurthman wants to make a motion to amend the agenda to add item 5B, which is a discussion on tonight's meeting, and then item 5C, which is deeds and surveys. And Mr. Kurtzman, I don't know if you used the word motion, but
Thank you for
If you can.
helping me through that. Yes, I would like to make a motion for 5B for tonight's meeting and 5C, or should I do one at a time?
so the motion would be, I move to approve the agenda with the addition of 5B and 5C, and then it would need to be seconded by a board member and then roll call vote.
I move to approve the agenda as published with the addition of an item 5B to discuss tonight's agenda, and an item 5C to discuss the deeds and surveys.
And do we have
I'll
a second?
that motion.
Okay.
Thank you.
Member Welch,
Yes.
Member Stevens,
Yes.
Member Panic,
Yes.
Vice Chair Kurzman,
Yes.
Chair Rothenberger,
Yes.
motion carries.
Now, could we have an approval for the minutes of our November 15th meeting?
I move that be approved.
Have a second?
I second.
Okay, thank you.
Member Welch,
Yep.
Member Stevens,
Yes.
Member Panic,
Yes.
Vice Chair Kurzman,
Yes.
Chair Rothenberger,
Yes,
motion carries.
thank you. Nayako, I think I'll turn it over to you with the next item, with the beach report.
Okay, so this beach report covers the first quarter from October 1st to 31st of December. They are prepared quarterly, and basically describes the activity what's happening on the beach in terms of our special events, our beach cleanups, how many weddings we have, et cetera, as well as input statistical information from the Sheriff's Department with regards to violations and such on the beach.
Okay. Thank you very
Broken
much.
down by month. So I will be including these each time we have a meeting for the
Can we
previous
ask
quarter.
questions about this?
Sure.
On the beach report, I noticed on November 13th, there's a hotelier meeting. Who would have been at that meeting? Who was eligible to go? Are there minutes of that meeting? Do we, as beach stewards, get to hear what that meeting so we can maybe help implement some of the things that are of interest to them? And
So I usually attend those meetings by Zoom, along with Jennifer McMahon, as well as the city manager, and they basically go over the events and such that are coming up, any issues, concerns the hotels might have. And I'm just pretty much there to listen. It's Jennifer that has all the information with regards to, what's happening on the beach and
I mean, there's a
such.
lot going on, probably with the beach and the hoteliers, and it might be helpful somehow if, I mean, as a resident myself, I hear a lot of what residents are concerned with, and we sort of see applications from hotels, but it might be good if somehow,
Yeah, we don't take any minutes. Robin from the chamber might take minutes because she does chair that meeting, which I believe happens every other month. So she might have the minutes, but the city is there for a short period, and then we exit the meeting because the hoteliers then discuss amongst themselves.
oh, it's sort of
You
like
know.
their own meeting, and then they invite the
Right.
city in for a
Correct.
portion of it?
Yes.
Okay.
And I need to back up one step as far as audience comments. Is there anyone here that has signed up to speak?
Yes. I believe Ocean Rescue's here now, yes.
All right. Would you like to come forward?
I see the presentation's queued up. Sorry, apologies if you guys asked for me earlier. There's a bit of traffic coming from Apollo. So, but is somebody able to queue this, or am I able to click through right here? I can kind of use this.
This is a presentation.
Okay, let me double check, let me check first. Okay, you guys can see it.
And just to be clear, this is the presentation. So
Yes,
we're good.
okay. Great.
This isn't public comment, this is.
Correct.
Okay, so we're
Presentation.
moving back, okay.
Are we there?
We're just talking
Item 1B.
Okay.
Don't
Well,
mind us.
all right, awesome. Well, good morning, everyone. My name's Shelby Thomas. I'm the founder and CEO of the Ocean Rescue Alliance International. We're a marine conservation restoration nonprofit, mostly based in South Florida, but we're looking to do some work over here on the west coast of Florida. A little bit about us: we focus on building artificial infrastructure for different biological purposes. So some of that's for coastal protection. We build breakwaters to reduce wave energy and protect against coastal erosion. We also design artificial reefs to mimic natural reef geology to support natural functions and habitat. We design different attachment mechanisms to scale coral, oyster, and mangrove restoration, and also uniquely use art as a way to connect the people back to the ocean. So we design artistic reefs as well that create ecotourism sites that further drive really the community and develop programs like education and citizen science programs to really give back to the youth and community here, as well as designing partnerships and research initiatives at each and every site to contribute to sustainable restoration. An importance of coral reefs in Florida, similar actually, this is more geared for the East Coast, but we really focus on oysters and mangroves on this coast of Florida. Similarly, all these ecosystems provide valuable services, not only economically, but critical services that support fisheries and people's livelihoods. Just in Florida alone, there's a $3.4 billion value on reef ecosystems. And there's lots of problems plaguing our marine ecosystems and coral reefs, from pollution, ocean acidification, habitat degradation, as well as disease. And specific to really what we view as one of the biggest problems is a missing connection between people and natural resources. Especially the ocean tends to be a little out of sight, out of mind. And so what we really value as an organization is designing actual projects that every individual can have a direct measurable impact on the ocean. And we'll share a little bit about that. I'll first start on our infrastructure. Our artificial reefs are designed to mimic natural reef geology. And a history of artificial reefs is really what you see on the left-hand side of the screen. Construction pilings, culverts, ships, the 2 million tires that were sunk off of Fort Lauderdale, but we even have hundreds of tire sites even on this coast. There's some tire sites even in St. Pete and throughout Tampa Bay. And historically, really, artificial reefs have been trash of land. And what we do is strategically design structures to be biomimicry, but also function for various needs, while being eco-friendly and incorporating restoration elements. And so this is a great example of one of our reefs, 1 week versus 9 months, and you can see that structure looks a lot more natural compared to traditional artificial structure. In addition, we incorporate restoration elements. All those little circles you see on the top right-hand side of the screen are our coral lock technologies, where we can simply screw in a coral just like a bolt. We also have different technologies for attaching mangroves as well as oysters directly to our structures. So we take a hybrid, what we call a combining gray and green infrastructure to create sustainable ecosystems and help regenerate marine life. In addition to creating complexity of habitat, we have designs that provide a coastal protection, breakwaters that reduce 75% of wave energy, focusing on restoration of corals, oysters, and mangroves, helping foster biodiversity, and also ecotourism. And so the art is really the fun part. We can do a variety of different designs. We can actually take 3D scans of any image, person, or logo, or company and make them into an artificial reef that serves marine life. This is one of our biggest eco-art projects in South Florida called the 1,000 Mermaids Artificial Reef. And so you can see here in this picture, we're 3D scanning the American mermaid, Emily Gugliano, who's a big educator and teaching about marine conservation as a mermaid, and turned her into a 13-foot tall mermaid sculpture. And the back of that has habitat complexity to support marine life. And when we take these digital scans, we actually keep those digital assets and make them into virtual and augmented realities to create a lesson platform, but also allow people to dive from anywhere in the world. And we want to bring this experience to everyone and also give an opportunity to get everybody engaged. So we have many programs from Adopt a Coral all the way up to you can make your own reef. And we want to encourage cities, counties, and municipal agencies, but also hotels and developers to get involved in becoming part of the solution in a very creative and innovative way. And so here's some diversity of our artistic structures. We have a reef in West Palm as well as Hollywood Beach, and we're building out a 7-mile underwater art park off of South Beach, Miami right now called Reef Line. And here you can see one of our underwater selfie stations with the dive suit, but we also have done memorials. You can see on the right-hand side of the screen, we did this memorial for a firefighter who passed away. And one thing you'll notice is all of our artistic structures still have a habitat element, so we really value making marine impact. So we do a very small fraction being art, where a majority is dedicated to those habitat structures you saw earlier. And this is an example of one of our last reefs that we did with the city of Hollywood. We put out 25 structures last year, and we're getting ready to put out another 50 this year, designing nearshore snorkel sites, all that are going out this summer. This site's about 45 feet of water, and you actually see Mayor Josh Levy doing an underwater handshake with me to build more reefs together. So we're really excited with that partnership with the city. We've been working with them now for 3 years. We also have a coral restoration program that we involve citizens, but also tourism. We're aiming to really build these programs where everybody that comes and visits Florida has the opportunity to outplant a coral, mangrove, or oyster with us and making a meaningful contribution to the environment. Then we form programs at all of these sites, citizen science and education, community workshops, and doesn't only happen underwater. We've done different workshops like what you see on the right-hand side of the screen with middle and high school students teaching about casting and what we do with concrete and habitat complexity, touching also on other elements such as STEM and really focusing on underserved community members as well, and opening the horizon of what we call the blue economy. There's many job opportunities within marine resources, and we want to be able to have communities partake and also help support the local economy. One of our most successful citizen science programs is our Coral Rangers, where we focus on middle and high school students to teach about coral restoration, even using principles like aquarium hobby fragmenting to teach some of these elements that we actually use in the water. And some examples of our innovation that we've done so far with coral is a lot of coral restorations done very individually, outplanting one coral at a time. And similarly with oysters, a lot of our restoration has been the same for 30 to 50 years. And every area is different. And so what we really find is there's a lack of being able to scale some of the restoration work, the cost being able to do that, as well as some of the materials might not be as eco-friendly. And as you can see here, a lot of coral restoration traditionally has been done with zip ties, nails, and epoxies. And so what we do is have different application designs that we can simply create an attachment mechanism that can scale restoration. This is a great example. We've done 25,000 corals in Florida so far with various restoration practitioners. We've actually worked with every restoration group here in the state of Florida. We use our Coral Lock, which is a threaded frag plug that you see in the top left-hand side of the screen. We can simply screw in a coral like a bolt to our infrastructure. And this is just a really great testament to some of our scalability with other really marine life like oysters and mangroves that we would focus on this coast. We also design site-specific designs specific to South Florida. A lot of different areas have different problems ecologically. And so what we focus on is designing bases that can actually enhance coral survivalship once we outplant them. And I'll give you a good example. This left-hand side of the top screen, you see some sea urchins. We actually made a little sea urchin house with our coral outplant base, and that actually enables the sea urchins to help maintain the algae around the coral. They found a lot of the coral was getting smothered by algae and dying, and so we actually use nature to be able to provide a base that can help maintain those corals. On the right-hand side of the screen, you see a dome. We made this for a boulder coral that's endangered in South Florida, and we actually made another version. University of Miami and Key Biscayne has a big problem with parrotfish predation on their corals. Over 70% of corals were dying that they outplanted. Nice little healthy fragments that are good snacks to the parrotfish. We made a small adaptation of making spikes that come off that base and prevent the parrotfish from eating the coral and immediately increase survivalship. So making these small changes has a huge impact on our restoration efforts, and we really prioritize that in all of our projects and species of focus. And what I want to end with is really our vision for transforming coastal communities. We want to build these ecosystems that not only protect coastlines and communities, but give back to the marine environment, supporting complexity of natural functions, as well as aiding in restoration and connecting communities together through art. And what we're doing here today is wanting to share more with you guys. We actually had a citizen reach out who actually set up this meeting to begin with, Olympia, who's been really wanting to advocate for a snorkel reef over here on this coast. Would love to do that. And so just our first time getting to share this with you guys. We have a few initiatives that we're actually working on right now, and actually have been working with Pinellas County to designate some sites that we could build our projects in. And there's so much immense potential on this coast, especially in terms of natural resources. We have a lot of sandy bottom here, which enables us to expand projects at a lot larger range than where we do in South Florida with hard bottom and coral reefs. So we have really a blank canvas of a lot of work that we can do that not only can protect the coastline. I'm sure you guys are probably very familiar with beach nourishment. Our hope is to turn artificial structures and breakwaters in lieu of doing beach nourishment, being able to invest in this kind of infrastructure that also has impact on the environment by creating habitat and aiding in restoration, but also ecotourism. So we take an assortment of all the structures to address different functions depending on the entities we work with and what those goals and priorities are. And so really this is just an intro to see if there could be project potential with you all over here.
Thank you, Shelby.
Very, very interesting. Yeah.
I'm most interested in the coastal resiliency aspect of it because we do suffer terribly on St. Pete Beach about that. So any information about the snorkel reef aspect, or how are you funded? Have you identified anywhere potentially in St. Pete Beach that might work?
Yeah, so there's several areas that we've been speaking with the county, even just from an accessibility standpoint. Our first site we were talking about was actually Fort DeSoto, just because it's already a public park. It'd be very accessible, but we're able to look at really any areas of priority. And so we'd really want to advise to kind of local community and agency folks to what they would prioritize as the best site. So certainly open to that. Some of the ways that we've actually funded projects previously has been a diversity. Actually, we've done art in public places through tourism funding. A lot of community redevelopment agencies have funded our work. For example, with the City of Hollywood, the CRA funded that artificial reef. And we've also brought in private donors and other specific fundraising elements. And specific to this area, we actually have an initiative. We have several LOIs from the Tampa Bay Rays as well as the Lightning, and we're working with trying to get the Bucks right now. And we want to try to pitch a Tampa Bay reef and really unite not only Tampa but Clearwater and St. Pete, and pull together, create a site that can commemorate our 2021 national title championships, but also use those platforms for good. And we have a really big water quality issue in this region, all throughout Tampa Bay and St. Pete. And so our priority would be using that as a catalyst to actually fund a larger restoration initiative that would encompass the full Bay Area of doing mangrove, oyster, and seagrass restoration that would address water quality in turn. So the artificial reef site would be really the main show front of creating ecotourism and bringing awareness, but we'd be doing a lot larger impact in multiple regions of restoration. And so right now we're spearheading fundraising for that and designating restoration sites. So we're putting a strategic restoration plan together, starting to talk to cities and gauge interest for regions that they would want a project in. We absolutely would love to do a project here and want to speak with you all to see where your priorities might lie, what your goals are. Specific to coastal protection, we can actually put out submerged breakwaters. So these are not visible by the eye. They sit between 4 to 6 feet under the water, and they provide just like what a natural reef does. It helps protect against storm surge and wave energy. And in our framework, we really view this as the most sustainable long-term approach because we can keep investing into putting out structures that not only address that goal of coastal resilience, but also create habitat and can do restoration and ecotourism. I mean, even if you just have limestone boulders, it can be a snorkel reef. So we just want to advocate for expanding these projects and kind of creating a unity of sharing that accountability of investing into these resources now rather than having to wait till later.
Okay, that's very
I have a few
interesting.
questions about this. So I'm always concerned about sort of the balance of nature a little bit and man's effect. And so are you recommending this to be in areas, do we have areas around here where coral has died and you're recommending it go back in the areas where the coral has died? Or are you recommending we put it in areas where there's never been coral before?
Really both. Corals, we don't have the same type of, my presentation's more focused on corals because that's mostly what we've done for the last 5 years. So we have artificial reefs all throughout South Florida. So now we're trying to bridge and do more reefs on this coast. We actually do have a lot of soft corals throughout the Tampa Bay region. If you go walk the beach, you'll see gorgonians and sea fans, and it's different corals though versus the Florida Keys. We actually have the third largest reef in the world in Florida that ranges from the Keys all the way up to West Palm. We have deeper reefs on this side of the coast that aren't ones that you typically would snorkel, but what we would be doing is creating habitat that brings in the marine life and also can aid in oyster and mangrove restoration, serves a similar function to coral reefs on this coast.
So you would be introducing coral at new depths that normally naturally don't exist?
No. No, we would actually just work with natural resources that are present over here. So we would either do sponge or soft corals. We wouldn't be taking corals from South Florida. So we work within environmental parameters with agencies to do things that are regionally specific. Here we would focus on oyster, mangrove, seagrass restoration as the priorities. If we do corals, it would be soft corals that are in the region, like gorgonians and sponges.
So that's what you're recommending for around
Yes,
here? So would
yeah.
that really do the blockage, the sponges, would that be good for?
So really the artificial structures themselves, and maybe the scale is a little hard to infer from some of the images, but we make structures that are 10 feet long by 6 feet tall or 6 by 6 by 6 feet, each weighing a minimum of 5,000 pounds to up to 25,000 pounds. So these structures are built to actually be that break and be that complexity of habitat. Why we design these reefs like this rather than using construction pilings or culverts is, for us, especially in South Florida, where we're losing critical habitat that supports marine life, we don't have that complexity that supports small baby juvenile fish. They have nowhere to hide or reproduce. And so through our designs, we're actually able to provide more of a nursery with our designs that will help everywhere. We can help restock fisheries and do specific designs depending on what we're seeing
So
the
these
needs
aren't
are.
sharp ones that you're supposed to like not go swimming near?
No.
They're not gonna be in swimming areas? And these aren't the ones that like if you touch them, they immediately die off?
No.
And then is it true, this is something that I was heard, the suntan lotion people wear, does that kill the coral?
It does have an immense impact. The oxybenzone specifically, there's sunscreens that are environmentally friendly and have better minerals. I mean, that oxybenzone is also not good for you to inhale. So, I mean, you'd be surprised the products that we use if you actually look into the ingredients. There's a lot of things that aren't that good for us and have potential risk, and they also risk the environment. But yes, sunscreen is a big impact. It's not the main reason of why corals are dying in Florida. But it is a contribution of pollution that affects them.
Do you think we have a lot of the coral here still that we should try to do a program to help by?
Absolutely. I mean, also sponge. So the sponge shocks, I'm sure you guys are a little familiar with, just north of here is very historic fishery for sponges. And sponges have been degrading rapidly, and there's various diseases that have impacted different types of marine life. And so we would prioritize focusing on species that need help in this region. So we would work with soft corals and sponges, but as I mentioned, really being able to do oyster and mangrove and seagrass restoration, what that does, those species help filter out the water and create habitat complexity that supports fisheries. So that's something that we prioritize for this region because that's what's here, that's what's been lost, even throughout the Tampa Bay. Part of my PhD program actually was doing scalp restoration in Tampa Bay, which I don't know if you guys knew. We used to have a small recreational fishery a long time ago that had since collapsed from just the water quality degrading and us losing acres and acres of seagrass. And that's super vital for helping with water quality and stability. And so our goal is to help rebuild that as an organization. And the infrastructure side meets a bunch of different goals, as we mentioned. But we will design the projects for that area, and depending on who we're working with, what their goals are.
are there products that we should, people just don't know, are there products that we should let people know, or, categories that people should just realize they shouldn't be using to help the things that you're
Environment.
concerned about?
Yeah, absolutely. We actually have a list on our website at Ocean. I'll put my info's right here at oceanrescuealliance.org that you can look for being a sustainable consumer and just being aware of your own individual impact. We don't really have a direct products list, but we'll have ingredients to watch out for. And same thing with sunscreens, right? It's just avoiding the oxybenzone side. There's plenty of sunscreens that are reef safe, that are environmentally safe, but it's just being aware, and that's a big part of it, right? Is being aware of what you're using and being cognizant when you're moving forward.
Hoteliers could offer the good ones.
Yeah. Yeah. And we want to try to encourage, all of the hotels across the beach line. If you guys could imagine, we could build literally sites across the coastline that not only drive tourism, we could be the dive capital of the world for the state of Florida, but actually building coastal resiliency and protecting the state instead of spending millions of dollars on dumping sand that goes right back out.
I have a couple of questions, please.
Go ahead.
Thank you for the presentation. Of course, there's a huge difference between the East Coast and the West Coast.
Mm-hmm.
The East Coast, you can easily swim out to the first coral reef. Here you can't. It's a long way offshore. Also, I've sailed up and down the shore 1,000 times, and you have to go pretty far out to put something that's 6 feet tall safely in the water. But the bay is in desperate need of help, and coral and mangrove and infrastructure that would make the oysters come back, or the oysters edible, would be very much appreciated. We're more concerned, I think, with the Gulf Beach than the Bay Beach. We should be concerned with the Bay Beach also, because that's really where things happen. This stays sandy a long way. You have to go a long way out to get to a real reef.
And so we don't just do work on a natural reef, so that's the benefit of these artificial structures. We would adjust the profile to being able to deploy them closer to shore. So we could actually deploy something between 300 to 600 feet offshore.
A couple more things. What are your structures constructed of?
So it's an environmentally friendly concrete that's pH neutral, and we use different organic minerals like basalt fibers and calcium carbonate, which is actually the same skeletal framework as a coral. So we actually test all these, and they're all very, very strong and get stronger over time as they're in the ocean.
And who founded this organization, and who funds it now?
So I founded the organization my first year of my PhD program about 5.5 years ago, and my reef builders actually contract out a manufacturer that builds the reefs with me. I make the designs. I'm a PhD marine biologist. I have a background in applied restoration of corals, oysters, and mangroves, and being able to scale work like this. And who normally funds our work? Typically, we've had a lot of municipal agencies as well as private entities donate and some grant funding. We typically take an assortment, and we always try to match. So, for example, the city of Hollywood they're doing 4 reefs with us this year that we're creating nearshore snorkel reefs right off of their local parks in Hollywood, Florida. And with that funding, we've actually been able to apply for matching funds with NOAA to triple that impact. We applied to add an additional 500 structures to those sites, as well as applying for some restoration grants so we can add corals to those sites after.
Have you been involved with the Living Shoreline projects?
Yeah, slightly. We work with a few partners that we're looking to integrate that we would bring in for projects we do in this region. We've also talked with Tampa Bay Estuary Program, Tampa Bay Watch. There's multiple organizations. We would all collectively work together to address like natural resource restoration here.
Good. Thank you very much.
So I'm a diver, and I actually have a certification in coral reef restoration, and actually down in the Keys have gone and planted coral on these structures and others. So I have a good background in that, and I think it's great work. It's a little bit of a different problem over here, as we've talked about, but do you have any data that you can share now or later about how these structures have helped beach preservation, and what, back to let's stop dumping sand, what can we do to keep the sand in place? It'd be really interesting to, follow up with what's some hard data of how has this been successful in other places, and then how could it be successful helping protect the sand that we put down, so we don't have to put any more sand down.
Right.
That would be interesting. I don't know if you could speak to it, or you could follow up
Yeah.
with staff
Yeah, I'm happy to provide.
for us to be able to actually see that here's something that's actually solved a problem we have, and how do we think about taking and working to implement that here.
Yeah, so I was actually my question was gonna kind of piggyback off that too, in relation to making it, just relatable to your everyday person. Like, this is far outside of my scope. However, we often hear about red tide when it's here and how inconvenient that is for anybody, how that relates to the grass and mangroves and, that filtering capabilities, but then also, with the structures. I mean, the sand washing out, having to be put back. Obviously a 10 by 10, 25,000 pound thing is huge, but how many would you theoretically need to protect a portion like Sunset Beach or, something, again, just maybe more relatable to everybody so they can fully grasp it,
Right.
as you alluded to in the start of your presentation.
Yeah. So what we would do is we always go out and do an environmental assessment and then look at the square footage of beachfront we're wanting to protect. It's more of the mileage, and then we typically will design a site depending on the local bathymetry and what that means. So we basically take in data of the currents and the impacts of that specific area, and then design a site that's meeting those needs, because every site's different, right? And especially on the East Coast, we actually have a lot more wave energy than over here. So we would actually need less structures typically in this region. And we would typically stagger it and make multiple rows. So it's a barrier coming in. It'll help retain that sediment on the beach side and prevent some of the erosion moving forward. Our goal is to, beach nourishment is really a Band-Aid. It's a quick fix. It's relocating sediment. Oftentimes now they've been doing it from the middle of the state, but historically they used to dredge, destroy habitat in South Florida. We had 3 rounds of reefs in Miami that were smothered in sand from doing beach nourishment, but we understand it's an immediate thing, and one of the really difficult things with funding something like this typically comes from tax-paying dollars to protect those coastal assets. But what we propose is to also create a shared accountability. If we're able to create these sites right off of hotels, we want them to help contribute. They're more incentivized to do so with having an artistic direction that's custom to them. But then you can also share the costs with the cities and counties. Okay, maybe this year we're going to take a fraction of the budget that we do for beach nourishment and invest into rounds of reefs. And realistically, this, depending on the mileage that you're wanting to cover, it's a relatively small print of funding versus the whole coast. So we want to make everybody part of this and building that accountability along the way. So it's not just the city that's responsible or the county. We want hotels and developers to get involved, and they understand. I mean, these are their coastal properties too. They benefit from them, and they want them to stay there. So it's a benefit for everyone, really. And our goal for funding this would be to, first kind of do site assessments, and we could give a proper scope. But, an example, the project we're doing for about 50 structures with Hollywood is around $650,000, but that's also including some programs, restoration. We're actually putting out an underwater camera that's live streaming one of the sites. So the infrastructure side, if we're just doing breakwaters, is less costly than doing custom art, for example. And I can give you an example. One of our really 6 by 6 by 6 units typically costs around $3,500. There's an economy of scale with that, where an artistic custom structure is around $15,000. And that's making a brand new 3D design and mold. When you're reusing molds, that cost drops. And then we, combine an assortment for a site typically. But if we didn't want to do the art and we're just focusing on coastal resilience, that's actually very economical to scale versus implementing art, for example.
Let me, again, if we could follow up and find where has this worked, so we can then go and talk to, the public, saying, hey, investing this is actually worked someplace else, it could work here, let's take a step.
Yeah, and we're seeing a lot more people invest into breakwaters. One example, DARPA, which is the defense agency, they actually invented the internet. They put $60 million towards investigating breakwaters to protect their bases in coastal areas. And so we're part of a sub-award research with University of Miami. There's 3 pilots out right now off of South Beach that are testing wave reduction of these hybrid structures. They're called X-reefs that produces. And so they're one of our close partners. We run all of our structures through simulations, not only models on computers, but they actually have a simulator that manipulates Category 5 hurricanes in their tank at And so we'll put the structures there and actually run models and bathymetry studies with those. So we can actually calculate exactly what's needed for an area, and then can provide. But there has not been to date a city that's fully gone all in on doing this kind of work. It's kind of been patchwork. You do see benefit. There is plenty of data and studies I can provide to you guys, and I'll follow up with you to provide that. But we're really wanting regions to incentivize everybody to become part of this now, so we're not being reactive later.
Then I just wanted to second, there was a thing of working with the hotels about marketing water safe or reef safe sunscreen. I think that's a really good idea. Anytime you're in open water, you should be using, safe sunscreen.
And they may already be doing that, but it just sounded like something.
I thought, from a marketing standpoint of how we can push, I think in the last meeting we talked about working and marketing different things, adding that would be a good idea. So I can't remember who said it, but
Yeah.
I think it's a good idea.
And one other comment to the funding, there's many ways that you can accomplish getting a project like this done and also getting grant support. A model that we would like to suggest is also, for cities that are allocating a budget for beach nourishment, we could build out the coastal protection side and then get more of the local engagement to fill out the art side. That would be the ecotourism. So we're wanting to create that shared accountability. City of Hollywood, for example, they actually just went all in. They did the art themselves as well as just the habitat structures. But we're now getting some of the community buy-in, and they actually have a campaign that they're asking the hotels and the local business owners to be part of this as well. And so it's becoming it's really starting to take up a lot of interest in the region. And so we're wanting to bring that elsewhere and encourage other people to do it as well.
Did I mishear you before? Because you said you're doing stuff with coral, but you're also doing other categories as well? Because the reason I ask is I just heard that Lake Okeechobee is getting opened up again. And they're going to release. And that in turn feeds and starts a cycle, and you get the red tide and everything else. And I've seen things where mussels and other kinds of species are nature's water filters. And so if we can get more of those things, not fish, but sitting out there, that would help. And I think I heard that you doing things with maybe oysters or other.
Yes, yeah. So that's for this region, we'd focus on oyster, mangrove, and seagrass restoration. Oysters filter about 20 to 50 gallons an hour, and if you get just one oyster. So, if you can imagine doing a large-scale restoration effort, that's going to help a lot of our water quality here. So the more we can use nature as a tool as a solution to some of the problems we're seeing, the better. And so we just enable technologies to be able to efficiently scale it. I gave you the example of the coral because that's what we've done the most of, but we have different technologies that I'm happy to share with you guys. One's called the spat mat. So an example of that, we actually pre-seed an attachment mechanism that looks like a mat to the structure. So we literally attach it down, and those already have hundreds of thousands of recruited baby oysters. So in areas that there's no oysters, we can actually pre-seed a reef. But actually, a lot of the cases, especially in these regions, there's just not structure for oysters to settle on. So the great thing is you can just put out reef infrastructure, like just the artificial reef with nothing on it, and you'll get natural recruitment of these oysters finding their homes, in a sense. And so a lot of these areas, we actually don't have to put as much resources towards actually putting those species out versus in South Florida. just because oysters are very efficient, reef builders. They're also reef builders just like corals, just a different species. So here we would focus on that. That addresses water quality. Mangroves as well, they also provide coastal protection, habitat for fish, sequestration of carbon. And so there's many things that we'd be able to tap into from a species restoration approach.
I think we should clear up that oysters need fresh water to grow, so they don't grow out on the Gulf or in the ocean.
So oysters
It
would,
would be through Tampa Bay.
Yeah, and New York City's doing it, aren't they?
Yep, they have the billion oyster project, I think is what it's called.
so we would need to use like mussels or something else out here.
So we wouldn't be putting them off the beach, but we're actually doing oyster restoration that would also in turn affect this whole area. If we're able to really help transform and do restoration within the bay, we're able to also affect water quality that trickles out and also impacts St. Pete.
If we had a healthy bay, we'd have a healthier ocean.
Yeah. So just some of the other considerations for St. Pete Beach particularly, we're a huge turtle nesting area, popular fishing area. How does that impact building a snorkel reef?
Yeah.
Would that have to be restrictions?
Good
on
question. So we do designs working with local agencies like Durham. Typically, it's an environmental protection agency. All of our structures have essentially our structures will mitigate for it's a requirement to even put anything out that you're not entrapping sea turtles. So we're very familiar with working within parameters that these agencies need. We would make adjustments depending on perhaps maybe the most popular areas of where they would go, just even from people putting up stakes when sea turtles are nesting. There's precautions that we can put up. We put up swim buoys as well and educational signs. The structures themselves should not impact the turtles.
All right, that's good. Got to worry about the turtles.
Yeah.
And the
We're
fish.
worried about the turtles too. We all of our reefs. We actually have had a resident turtle at one of our sites in West Palm that we see all the time.
They actually use the structure for protection underwater.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
They get to have
Olympian
more
had mentioned
fish
something
now.
about
It's
lights.
good.
Underwater
Sorry.
lights, Olympian had mentioned something.
Yeah, so Olympia's presentation's separate from my organization. Olympia is a local resident, has seen some of our work and really has been advocating for bringing some of this work over here, which we would love to do, and actually helped set this up with you guys here to share our work. Olympia has a lot of the considerations into like doing lighting and safety. That really comes a little later in the project, depending on the region. I'll give you an example for Hollywood, because we're doing nearshore reefs. There's a lot of signage we're putting out, public information, safety suggestions. Even for our sites that we have in deeper water, we don't suggest people to swim to them or free dive them. They're dive site. So all of that's appropriated depending on the project. I didn't present Olympia's, but if you guys did get a peek at that before, those are just kind of a newer idea. She would like to do a reef that commemorated a local public figure, but that's also the beauty. I mean, we can do any artistic direction. We're doing a Mayan reef with a Mayan community in Mexico. It's our first culturally relevant reef site, so we want to incentivize like cities and people to get really invested with how can we storytell using the art to connect people and drive not just a destination that brings tourism, but actually can create a change. And so Olympia has a suggestion for an artistic reef that she would like to have us help facilitate, but you got to take some steps to get there. So if you guys are interested, we'd love to come back. I can share some of the coastal resiliency data. If you're interested in a snorkel reef, we can scope out doing some surveys of where that would be the most appropriate with the county, and then the steps to do so. And normally the process from there is we will present a proposal, present that to a commission, and if a CRA is involved for helping pay for it or support it. I'm not sure how you guys support your projects currently, but.
That sounds like a wonderful idea.
Thank you very much for your presentation.
Yeah, no problem.
Good information.
Thank you. Yeah, feel free to reach out if anyone has any questions.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Shelby.
Now, do we have anyone from the audience that wants to speak, or is signed up to speak? Okay. Then we will move to item 5. Ayako, do you have any
Sure,
initial?
I can start if we're on 5A. So generally speaking, we did a lot of work with the Historic Preservation Board, and you may have noticed that they got a resolution approved. Mind you, they meet monthly, so if the board does want to do something like this, I would suggest, it doesn't have to be every month, but more than quarterly, just to keep the momentum going. But generally speaking, in the Code of Ordinances, Section 22-308, it lays out the powers and duties for the Beach Stewardship Committee. And it allows the committee to adopt rules and regulations that are reasonably necessary and appropriate for the proper administration and enforcement of what you all do. Legally, we can use this verbiage to develop some kind of resolution. This can go two ways. The board can initiate a proposed ordinance actually changing and adding to the powers and duties in the code. Obviously, ordinances require 2 readings, advertisement. At the end of the day, whether it's a resolution or ordinance, it would have to be approved by the commission. A resolution, on the other hand, is something that can be passed with 1 reading. It's not codified in our code. It would be codified on the city's website under the Beach Stewardship Committee, along with the rules and regulations for this committee specifically. It can be as broad or as narrow as you want. Using the Historic Preservation Board as a reference, there was like a checklist of 12 to 13 things that they felt like they wanted to review, right? And the whole purpose of them reviewing it was to ensure that the character of the historic district and other contributing structures was maintained. And as long as this board can find their purpose, right, for what the resolution is, and it's somewhat related to what you all do as a beach stewardship committee, then I will meet. I can attend every meeting every month if you guys want to meet, or every 2 weeks. I'll make myself available as much or as little as possible to kind of help guide you and put something that's legally sufficient together for the commission. And I will let Mr. Kurtzman speak at some point on what ideas he had for the resolution, but I just wanted to provide a base level of how we do this, and offer my assistance throughout the process.
I guess that's an invite for me to say something, but I appreciate your taking the lead on this, because all I'm trying to accomplish is something to address this underlying concern of just, what you think is the right vehicle. I don't want to boil the ocean. I don't want to make this more complex than it needs to be. I think that when the Historic Preservation Commission ended up doing an entire, I think it ended up going to the City Commission, and they had to end up doing multiple readings, was it, for an ordinance? Did they do an ordinance themselves at the City Commission?
They did a resolution. The reason there was multiple readings is because the first version the commission wanted edited. So what they saw, and there was like a joint workshop too with the commission and the Historic Preservation Board. It was an initiative that was going on for 6 months. So the 2 readings it was in front of them once. I had to edit it based on what the commission wanted edited, and then it was approved the second time.
Yeah, so I don't want to make it too complex, but I don't want us from inside here to overstep our bounds in trying to say, hey, we want to be doing X without City Commission buy-in. So, however the best way to accomplish that is, I look to to yourself and staff, or whoever can help guide us to accomplish that.
I think a resolution is, the problem that we've ran into is, we're an older city, and for example, if you just come up to a decision in meeting minutes, good luck finding that 4 years from now. A resolution is something that you can point to that will be part of the website. It's more formal. It helps staff too, right? It helps staff in the commission say, oh, when preparing for the agenda, it's like, all right, we have the resolution. If any of these things are about to be decided on, then we know what we can populate the agenda on, and just helps for clearer communication moving forward. So I do think a resolution at a minimum is the least resistant, the easier to accomplish, but will definitely be the most benefit for what we're trying to do.
Okay.
Can
Okay, would you like to speak, John?
Can I ask a question?
Yes, you can.
So I watched the last meeting where I think this came out of the input-output conversation, and I'm just going to ask some clarifying. What I thought I heard last is you were thinking about how can we become more informed, not to go into where we are making decisions or recommendations. So as active things are happening, that we are somehow included in a chain of communication that would inform us, that then would allow us to go talk to the commissioners as we see fit. Is that what you're proposing?
Well,
Because I just got all this and I haven't had time to digest what
The
you...
input was that we would be informed, and then it would be incumbent upon us to decide, do we need to ask for an emergency meeting, or can we wait till the next meeting, at which point we decide, do we want to then take
Okay.
an action?
So it's not that we're putting up a resolution that's saying, for these types of things, you have to come to us to get approval. It's us asking staff to keep us in the loop of when certain things are, anything to do with the beach is happening, just put us on the CC line so we can see what's happening. It's on us to then review it, and then we can work through the chair and the staff to do a special meeting, or we can go to the commissioner that appointed us or to other commissioners.
I think you're stating pretty well
Okay.
what should be in the
Okay,
resolution.
I just wanted to
Yeah, I
make sure I
think that's good.
understood what you were asking.
Our mandate is.
If I may, Chair,
Yep.
sorry.
I just want to make sure I understood him of what we were thinking about here.
Okay. Please, Matthew, go ahead.
Yeah, because I think a good base level is to understand right now what the code requires of you all, right? Because it's not much, to be frank with you. Number one, it's reviewing information related to ongoing beach nourishment. And then number two, it's reviewing information relating to the preservation and maintenance of public beaches. That's it.
Yeah.
Those are the two things by code that should be coming in front of you. And if the idea is, hey, these projects are affecting the beach, or, if there's any ordinances related to beach nourishment, or, you can start adding, without adding powers and duties, just kind of saying, hey, commission, we're here, we're willing, we want to assist you. Nothing that you pass will ever give you the power to approve or deny something without the commission, right? So no matter what, it'll always be in the recommending category. But those are the only two things right now that by code you're required to be informed of.
Right, and we're not attempting to change that. We're just attempting to ensure that that happens, and we have the tools to do those very things. That's all we're really trying to make sure we're able to do. And maybe, the devil's in the details, if we don't want someone to look and say, well, this request they didn't say they want to do this to the public beach. But, if someone thinks it could have an impact on the public beach, then we would somehow maybe say, err on the side of, maybe let us have some information that we could, let us know what's happening.
If I may, hi, Jennifer
Please.
McMahon.
Please.
Because we went through this with the Historic Preservation Board, and I didn't hear Matthew in the beginning, but what we wanted to codify in the resolution was things that they recommended over the past 20 years to be, I don't want to say policy, that's not the right word, but if we're replacing hex block sidewalk, it's going to be hex block sidewalk. If we are going to be putting in native trees, so they made decisions on certain things. We literally had somebody go back and listen to 20 years of meetings, wrote all those things down, and that was included in the resolution as recommendations from the Historic Preservation Board that they had, over the course of 20 years, made what they want to make as a priority. So we can also do that with here. I mean, it'll take us a little bit, and I think a lot of it has to do with environmental, with the sea turch, with the black skimmers. I see Cindy here. So I think we have an idea, or at least I have an idea, of some of those things that we would want to include in the resolution, but it would also be where your voice, it's codifying what it is that this group does and what you guys want to see in front of you. And for staff to look at something that shows decision-making, that we don't have to go to you again because we know what your feeling is on turtle lighting or whatever it is that you guys want to include in that resolution, that is how then city staff and different departments know this is how we handle certain things that go around the beach, because you guys had in generalities and had decided that this board, as well as a board 10, 15 years ago, that we could try to go back and start writing all those things down. But that's what we did with the Historic Preservation Board, and Matthew, you can jump in if you want, but we did our homework quite a bit and did that kind of thing. So if it's, you want to review cabana service or things like that, again, the powers of this board is a recommendation. It's not a yes, no, but it's what you guys want to be informed in, or how we operate things that we can make decisions as staff that this is what this board and boards before of beach stewardship has recommended. So that's kind of how we went through it with Historic Preservation Board. And it took us a while, but we got there.
Yeah.
Right, Matthew?
That's a good summary. It's a good idea. I'm here to tell you, don't be afraid of speaking up and coming up with something. I mean, that's why we're here, because all of this can be controlled by the city. We're not talking about private property. We're talking about direction for city staff to benefit the beach, right, which is our most prized possession in our city. So I'm all for it.
And I just want to say that I think it's not clear cut in that, even if the way we used to do it might have been that when you got an application from a hotel to do a certain thing, and you might say, oh, they just want to put chairs right up to the end of their property line. I know that you wouldn't say yes, they could do that, but the ramification of that might be an impact to the public beach. And so anything that has potentially an impact on the public beach, I think, are the kind of things like applications for the beach, for the cabana services and so forth, I think are the things that we should get copies of, even if we just put them right in the garbage.
Well, I think that's a workshop or your next meeting discussion with
Exactly,
what you guys feel like you want to be, what that should be. And then it's a discussion of how feasible is that? I mean, you guys meet quarterly, so are some of that, you don't want to have somebody waiting 4 months to get a decision on something.
I think that's the question I was saying before. This is more your
Informational.
is information only.
Just CC'd.
Us just CC'd on it versus,
Sure.
hey, it's coming to us for an opinion.
But I think it could be both.
Consultative opinion that
I think
goes
it could be
forward.
both, too.
It
I think
could.
you guys may or may want to have a recommendation on certain things. So to me, that's that's diving in pretty deep, and it might be a special workshop we do, or just at the next meeting you guys have, that's the big thing on the agenda.
Jennifer, if something came up that was, need to be treated in a timely manner, we can just have a special meeting, can't we? And have that presented to us. I think anything that has to do with the beach, we should be in on from the beginning. That's our mandate.
Right, but I think in public beach, I think when recently there's a Trade Winds wants to move their fire pit because of a big group that's coming from one small location to another location, and it has to be before March 1st or whatever, and the fire marshal is handling that. So, I mean, that's why it's not as easy as anything related to the beach. There's little things like that, that I don't know if that's beneficial, informational, yes, but, yeah,
Is the city commission getting CC'd on that?
no. Because the fire marshal handles that.
So-
It's her purview to handle fire code.
Our charter is that we give advice to the city commission, so what I think we would be interested in is a subset, it would be.
Anything going to the
subset of things
commission?
that the city commission
Okay.
is being involved in.
And I don't know if past history is pertinent, because for a long time, this commission, this stewardship group didn't have a whole lot of voice, and was, I don't know, sort of ceremonial, I thought. I was on it years ago, and I didn't think we did anything.
Well, it went away for a little bit and came back, and
Well, it's interesting, too.
at least I'd want to look back to see what some of the things is, to see if there's something in there, but,
We can read what we're supposed to do, and we could start from point A, which is now, and go forward, and I don't think we'd have, I think it would be beneficial to,
however you guys want to do it, yeah. And if you want to do a workshop or a special meeting before your next meeting, so we can really dive into that, I think that's up to you guys, how you want to move forward.
I mean, one way is to, anything the commission gets right.
Related
is
to the beach.
That's one way. The other one is, I think you recommend, stand back and let's do a workshop, and let's get the menu of all things beach, and then we go through in a deliberate way, what are the things that we'd want to be informed of, and then work through the process. I think that would be.
I think you'll realize the
Ways of
menu is
solving.
quite longer than you think it is.
Have we-
Say again?
I think the menu is quite longer than what you think it is. Yeah.
Totally agree, but that's, I was trying to say.
Right, but we can come up with that, yeah.
It's gonna take some work on both sides for us to really understand, because the main asset of this place is the beach. Lots of things touch the beach, and let's beware of what we ask.
Yeah.
Because there are so many things that touch it. How can we really make our charter make a difference of what we're involved in?
Yeah.
Moving a fire pit that's a fire, in my opinion, is a fire marshal
Right.
issue, not
Right.
a beach committee, stewardship.
Have
we
we,
probably shouldn't have a fire pit on the beach anyway.
have we said enough that
You're no
that
fun.
Matthew could draft a resolution that's indicative of a subset of the matters that are normally forwarded to the city commission, that would be,
Start there.
described in a general term of what subset would be forwarded to the Beach Stewardship Committee for consideration. What we do with it, we already have the ability to declare, emergency meetings if we need to. We don't need to change that. The only language is relating to what information is going to be provided
Well,
to.
that's why we need to know the information before we can do the resolution. Because the resolution will be the whereas, and that's where we need the details. So, correct, Matthew?
I actually like the approach of a potential workshop where it's an informal setting. You may allow for public comment too, because I think it's
Okay.
important to see who's out there and what businesses want to come up. And you lay out, 10 to 12 things, because me putting together the resolution realistically takes a matter of 10 days. I mean, it's not a very long process from start to finish. And if I had clear direction, I would be able to just look at the meeting minutes and kind of, write it accordingly. Because right now, if I put together something, it would just be a lot of legalese without substance, right? Because I'm depending on this board to help me with the substance.
And it's not enough to say that it's anything related to, anything that you currently are sending to the city commission related to beach activities.
I think that's too broad. The whole point of this resolution is to not leave it up for interpretation, is so that me and the next city attorney 25 years from now and the next Jennifer 25 years from now can look at the resolution and say,
10
okay, I know what
years
this
from now.
means. This is really clear.
So could
right?
you
When you say
provide
something
examples?
general like all beach activities, I mean, then you're getting into a subjective interpretation. And what if we miss something?
So could you
Right.
provide examples of the kind of things that do go to the city commission then of beach activities, so we know how to check yes or no? Because I don't know what those categories are.
I'd have
That's
to.
the point of the workshop.
Yeah.
We can start
For
there.
the
I can take a
workshop,
look.
for the workshop.
I mean, one way to do it, you go back in history, what's gone in front of the commission over
Yeah.
the last 5 years,
Yeah.
and look at it and start check, okay, this had a beach impact, it didn't. And then you look at the subcategory of what caused that, and we could drive it that way.
We need that list.
I'm not trying to tell you how to do it, but it's just.
No, I mean, that's how we did it with the Historic Preservation Board, quite honestly. We went back and watched meetings and did minutes and tried to come up with the basis of a list that we thought that's where it went, and that spawned a couple other side conversations, but I think that list, at the end of the day, was what we ended up with.
I mean, unfortunately, the word beach is in our city name, or I would do a FOIA request for the word beach, and I'd find
No,
all
no.
the emails.
Yeah.
No.
Right.
It would park, we have it.
No, so I mean, we've already been through it, so we've got a template of how we can get to where you guys want, and I think that's what we said to the commission when we passed the Historic Preservation Board resolution. If any other board would like to do this, it's at their request.
So
So,
we just need some
we
suggestions.
have not much else going on in the city, so I'm sure we can get right on that.
Yeah. So anyway, if you guys could figure out a way to carve that, you know what we're looking for. We're looking for.
Yeah, so let us start, and then we'll get with you on some potential workshop dates in a couple weeks.
Yeah.
And just keep in mind that it's gone dormant for a while, but the beach ordinance will eventually come up again. And the commission's made it clear that it wants you all's opinion on that. So something else to think about.
I actually was thinking about that. I was going to add it as an agenda item, but since you brought it up, in the downtime of the ordinance, because it is so confusing to be moving major sections at the same time we're making changes, and it means that it's very difficult for the public to recognize what's changing when you redline and move an entire chapter to another chapter, and so the entire thing is redlined and you've changed 3 words.
I have a PowerPoint that is specific to all the changes.
Okay.
So it doesn't even get into the legal stuff. It's just, hey, we're adding this. This is what we're changing. I think we've come to the board with that same PowerPoint to make it easy. I understand what you're saying. It's a lot when you're looking at the full document, but we pulled everything that was either changed or added and did a slide just on
Maybe there
that.
were just some scrivener's issues, because there were like some doomed things that changed that weren't represented. But, okay, because all I was going to suggest was that in the downtime, we could do an ordinance change that just did the mechanical thing of moving things without changing until we were ready to do the change. But I don't know if that's worthwhile.
We can look at that then when we bring it back. I mean,
That was going to be my
I
suggestion.
don't think Matthew and I are in a downtime, but
Idea. I actually mentioned that, ironically, member Kurtzman, to Jennifer a couple weeks ago. Like, why don't we just move everything that's
Yeah.
currently there
Right, thank you.
and then start with the edits, right? Obviously, I act at the pleasure of the commission, so I'll have to get direction from that on that. But I do. I mean, if you think it's hard understanding it, imagine writing it. You know, so sometimes I get
Yeah,
cross-eyed
we've had
doing the
it
same
dormant
thing.
for
But
so
I did
long
put some
where
thought
we
into
need
that. It's not a bad idea.
Yeah, just like put the waterway stuff where
Yeah.
it belongs, and just, no changes, just
waterways is a whole nother thing.
Just mechanically put things where they belong without changing anything. And that way, when we do the changes, it'll be a lot easier.
Yeah,
Okay.
for us too.
That was the change, that was the
Yeah,
comment.
Can you send that PowerPoint back out
Yep.
to us?
Yeah, please.
100%.
I was gonna say the same thing.
I appreciate it, thank you.
yeah, no problem.
Do you want to explain to the new members why it's been on hold?
We've had other things pop up.
And also the state law?
The business impact statement?
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, yeah,
That was what I was,
October, sorry.
yeah, I wasn't trying to. If it's a business impact.
We have half the staff. We have half the staff.
The business impact analysis,
Yes.
if I remember right
Yes.
in the minutes I looked at.
That's one aspect.
Yeah, that was my understanding, was the business impact.
Well, and it hasn't really even been approved, done first reading. So,
Right.
The ordinance or the impact?
correct.
Okay.
It
the-
did a
the
first
ordinance.
reading,
So the
but it didn't
business
get- yeah.
impact statement, which is statutory now, is something that's required prior to final adoption, which would be second reading.
Yep.
So we could technically still work through the changes and get it approved at first reading and then try to figure out how we're gonna, at a staff level, do the business impact statement. But I just wanted to clarify, it hasn't been approved in any reading yet.
Okay. Next. Do we need a motion to move forward? We're good.
We don't. I mean, as long as there's I feel like there's a consensus from the board members to do what Jennifer just mentioned. You know, we'll do some internal research. I don't know what everyone's schedule is, but maybe the clerk can help us with one of those doodle polls, which kind of just sends you a bunch of dates that we're looking, and the one that everyone picks, we usually schedule. And we can just, you know, give us some time, probably 3 or 4 weeks, but we can schedule something before your next meeting to kind of go through what we uncovered and then take it from there.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. Is there any more business to be
5A?
discussed?
There was that
5A.
other
That was
public
5A.
item for
B and
discussion.
C. So that's your horse.
Okay, so I'll do 5B then.
Yep.
5B was tonight. So I actually, at one of the hearings, mentioned that I believe that beach stewardship, as a citizen, I mentioned that I thought beach stewardship should provide input to things like conditional use before decisions are made. But, you know, it's at the pleasure of the commission to want that information. And I have been at, I think, one of the other hearings where someone from another group, commission, did stand up and make some comments. And so I believe it's within our charter, if we want to stand up and make some comments as a beach commission, to give some input to conditional use permit. But if someone does that, they need to do it representing the commission. The Beach Stewardship Committee, sorry, Beach Stewardship Committee, not commission. And or prepare comments and send them to them. The public should also be invited to make any comments from a beach perspective. I mean, what's happening in this particular situation is you have, traditionally, it's been one hotel on a single lot. I personally, I've observed that where there's been one hotel, there now will be three hotels. Three different chains, or 2 chains, and the initial hotel will be on the one lot. From a beach perspective, I think that might mean that there will be people who want Marriott chairs, people who want Serrata chairs, and people who want Hampton Inn chairs. And I think one of the things Serrata has done very well has been they don't pre-allocate chairs. So when you look at the beach, I've seen that Serrata, because we can talk, I think we can talk about this quasi-judicial hearing. Correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, can we talk about this? I mean, I don't want to step in something that.
No, I appreciate you asking. Very fine line here. I think the discussion should really be, does the board want to authorize a member to speak on its behalf tonight? Yes or no?
Before we discuss what they should say as a representative?
Yeah, you can, but just keep it limited to the beach.
Well,
Right.
Not, I mean, the overall project itself,
Right.
not really related to the beach. I mean, the project is providing beach access points. It's providing an ingress egress along the mean high water line. I mean, there's some things related to the beach. Are you okay with that? Is there some things that you all are worried about as a board from the impacts on the beach specifically from the project? That's kind of where I would lean towards this conversation.
I actually just realized that since you're not here, you didn't see, but I went through the packet and just copied and pasted the portions of the resolution that related purely to the beach. So in the resolution, items 15, 18, and 22, 30 and 32 were specifically about the beach or about the beach access. And then I also, even though I had a search on the word beach, and there were 20,000 occurrences of the word beach, I sort of focused and was able to find the ones that really were about the beach. And again, we're talking about either like the beach lighting, or the site plans and the coastal construction line where it related to the easement for the beach, and the beach walk, and conforming to the beach regulations for the beach chairs and things like that will be coming down the line, policy 2 and the average 15 width. So all of those, they're entirely beach related.
Got it.
And so that was okay, first step, as you said, do we want to have anyone talk about this tonight?
Matthew, in our charter, it clearly says that we're to deal with public beaches, correct?
Correct.
And so my point is that when you expand a hotel into having 3 hotels and on the lot, and you're having a conditional use, which is where the city is deciding to expand the number of units significantly, and has a choice in doing so. And there's been comments by many people about when you have more people, they begin to go off property. If they don't want to rent the chairs from the property or other things, they start going to the public beach and they go other places. Any change can certainly have impacts on the public beach. So I'm going to make a motion that we have a representative or representatives speak tonight at the conditional use hearing regarding the Beach Stewardship Committee's input on impacts regarding the public beach.
I would second that motion.
Your question was private beach, public beach. Is that where you were going?
Basically, yes.
Yeah. It's all public. Every time we add another person to the beach, they're affecting the public beach.
Yeah,
And they're
I'll
affecting
keep my personal views out because I've said this multiple times. I always think all the beach should be public. I mean, that's just, right? That's just my own. We're Florida. People come here for beaches. But in this specific situation, I mean, Member Kurtzman, I think you've taken the right approach. Like, why don't you look at the conditions, specifically number 18 first? Because even though there's a motion in a second, whoever appears tonight can stay. We spoke about the conditions related to the beach at the Beach Stewardship Committee today, and we agree, or we don't, right? I mean, it doesn't always have to be a negative tonight. But 18, I mean, do you guys agree with public access easement? I can assume the answer, but what are your thoughts?
Well, can I answer that? Or should I wait for someone
I
else?
actually need to read it before I...
Well, should I wait, or should I?
If we're going to go this far, I would like to read it, if that's okay.
Yeah. And while you're reading that, Member Kurtzman, was that the first condition that you pointed out, or was there one prior to that?
15.
15. Okay, so maybe let's start in order, just for efficiency purposes.
I may not have copied it completely. It was just the 2 sentences. The one sentence, the applicant, yeah.
So I was involved in this condition. The reason being is because if they agree to it now, less likely to appeal anything that we do. So it was more of limiting the potential appellants when we do adopt a beach ordinance. And they were agreeable to comply with whatever we lay out, whether that's chairs. I mean, most of you have been involved in that discussion, so that one's pretty straightforward.
So for 18, being seaward of the CCCL, doesn't that also require Florida Department? DEP approval as well? So they're asking us first and then they'll go, or do they already have?
This beach walk, just to give you some clarity, this beach walk is referenced in our comprehensive plan. It's been something that's been floated out there for the last, I mean, I've been here 8 years. For the last 8 years, it's an idea. I don't know if you guys have ever been to Miami Beach, where they have that boardwalk near the beach where people walk and rollerblade and bike. Don't know if it'll ever come to a point, but if it does, then just in case, since this project is ongoing, we're requiring the applicant provide us the area for that beach walk so that we can connect, I believe, all the way up to County Beach. And Jennifer may be able to speak on that, but that's where this came from.
She left the room, but actually I should clarify that I believe that the 2015 amendment changed it, that we no longer refer to it as a boardwalk and started just referring to it that it's just some sort of strip. That they may not still have a boardwalk, but they're just going to have some sort of strip there. And they got rid of the boardwalk reference. But it's still the same concept.
You know, we do have a sidewalk that connects everything.
Where?
It wouldn't be a sidewalk, it'd be more of like a
No, but we
wooden
have
dock.
an existing sidewalk along Gulf Boulevard that connects everything. Do we need another beach walk? And where would it end?
It's a good question.
Yeah.
So
We're talking tens of millions of dollars to build something like this.
And maintenance.
Yeah,
And
so
liability.
it's there because it's in our comprehensive plan. I just don't know the reality of it ever happening. You need funding, state approval, DEP approval. It's going to be a big project if it ever does come to light.
So I read 18 back to, I paused for a second, and I say, anything that, we should discuss, anything that's seaward of the CCCL, you could argue we should take a look, any changes that are happening seaward of the coastal construction control line, we should
That's a very interesting point. You mean for the public work, for
Yes.
our
Right.
charter?
I mean, that's a pretty black and white. Anytime you go over that line to do something,
Right,
that should be beach stewardship.
right.
Because that line was put in place by the state
reason.
for a purpose. And anything that goes above, changes on the other side of that is potentially a trigger for us, or is the trigger for us to review.
Yeah. And something that I didn't print, and I should have, and it's really important for the new people here, is a slide that I made that I analyzed, not just the Serrata, but I've done it previously for the other hotels. And if you go to the Pinellas County Tax Assessor, they have two lines for taxation of land. The first line is the actual hard lot, and that's, by square feet of the actual land. And then there's something called marsh and wasteland and sea, I forgot the exact term, but it's the area past the coastal construction line, but it's the area that they can't build on. And it's the area where the sand dune is. And it's a little wiggly, and it actually includes a little bit of sand, but you can sort of tell that there should be sand dunes there, but it's the sand dune area. And they're taxed on that, but at a much lower rate. And then there's the huge area that I drew in blue, and that area is where all the chairs are and everything. And that's not taxed. That's not part of the tax. It may be on their property line, in their deed.
So, Member Kurtzman, not to limit you, but let's just try to be efficient with timing, because we do have, City Hall does need to be prepared for 4 o'clock today.
But, so I'm just getting at, would that be public beach?
Well, regardless of taxing and who paid, the question is, are you agreeable to them at some point when we develop a beach walk, which will clearly come in front of you for input, for them to provide us public access easement?
Sure.
And I don't see why the answer would be no.
No, that'd be fine. Yeah.
That's the board. I mean, do you not agree for them to give us an easement, or do you?
I agree, but I think I missed an item here that's not in this resolution, and that was the 10 feet that was supposed to run along the high water mark. Or is that, what item is that in the resolution? Did I miss it, or is it no longer in the resolution? There's supposed to be a 10-foot strip along the high water line that they're also giving us. Matt, 10 or 15 feet. At one point, she said 15 feet. Other times, they said 10 feet. And I don't see that here.
Let me just pull up the resolution.
And that's very important. And maybe in my haste last night, I didn't notice it. And I mention it for two reasons. One, of course, is it's vital to have there. But the other thing is that staff wrote a question about it in an earlier iteration of this process and said, well, what about the private beach? Are you going to let the citizens on the private beach? And I thought that was a dangerous thing to say because of the whole customary and usual question.
To get back to his, right, have we made the decision, do we want, because I think we're
The
getting,
motion's on the table and we haven't voted.
I think we should, because now we're getting into actually reviewing it versus are we going to go to the commission, to send somebody to the commission tonight to say, hey, beach stewardship, we'd like to review this.
So I made a motion, someone seconded it, and I guess the next step is to go to a vote. Are we ready for a vote on whether we want someone to speak tonight?
If everybody's in
One or more
agreement, we go to a vote.
Okay. Member Welch?
Yes.
Member Stevens?
Yes.
Member Panic?
Yes.
Vice Chair Kurzman?
Yes.
And Chair Rothenberger?
No.
Motion carries.
Okay. So to answer your question, Member Kurtzman, it's condition 22G.
Now,
As in girl.
now I think the
Okay, sorry.
question is,
There you go.
what should be said?
Oh, and who should you send? Because this meeting will probably go from 4 till roughly 2 or 3 in the morning.
Is it as simple as, hey, we had this discussion in our meeting today. We believe that due to the effects on the beach, this should be reviewed. We should have time to review this in the Beach Stewardship Committee. Full stop.
No, I would not suggest that at
Okay.
all. I would say, I would look at the conditions related to beach, and I would, if you really want to send someone, then someone should just say, we reviewed the conditions related to beach access, condition 15, 18, 22G, have a list, and say, we agree. Or, we think 18 should say
Okay.
this, right? I mean, more specific to the actual conditions. And the only reason I say that, not to just be direct, is because this is quasi-judicial, and
Nope.
there's just a way to do this in a way, correctly.
I understand the approach that you're using here, Matt, and I agree, and I like the concept of leading with positivity and with where we see things that work. And I think that the other piece where we could help, though, is in making some suggestions as we're charted to. And I don't know that I have the answer, but as I was getting at before, one of the things that Serrata does well right now compared to a number of the other hotels is when you look down the beach, you have some hotels that bundle two chairs with every room, whether they reserve them after they check in or not. And those hotels often will have a sea of empty chairs. And then you have Serrata, which does not do that. And they have a very nice, open, clear area of the beach typically. And then you have another sea of empty chairs. And that's usually very nice. However, recently they put up a sign that says, private beach, you better not have an umbrella or something else that you didn't rent from us, something along those lines. And that in turn, as we've heard, discourages people from then, if they have those things as guests, to go elsewhere. So the question is,
How does that relate to these? How does this connect to this?
so the question is, if you have an applicant now for conditional use, you have an opportunity as a city commission to put conditions on what you would like them to do as for conditions for their rules for the beach. They're going from being allowed to have 30 units per acre to 75 units per acre. That's a lot of people they're adding to the beach. What things would we like the city commission to say, well, if you're gonna put that many people in your hotel, we'd like you to protect the beach in certain ways. Maybe you need to promise to have these kind of rules with regard to how many people per room, or this many people per chairs per beach, or
Do we
something,
hold the Don to those same standards?
if they were going for conditional use.
Well,
Conditional use is a new door they're going through.
They've already agreed to comply with our beach ordinance, which a lot of this is gonna be in, and so.
So we can solve this through the beach ordinance.
In there. I'm just trying to advise you on the best approach, and I don't know who's gonna go, but if it is Member Kurtzman, just remember, you're essentially giving up your time to speak on behalf of the board, and you're gonna get 3 minutes. So you don't have a lot of time. All right, so you gotta be concise with your thoughts, you gotta be direct with what the board wants.
Exactly.
And that's just my advice, I'm just trying to help.
And I don't want to speak on a topic unless I have agreement from the board on what that message should be. I'm not asking for a license to say something that they haven't agreed on.
Starting with the conditions was a good one. I think 15, them complying with the city's beach ordinance, I don't see that as a bad thing, unless you all do. But that beach ordinance, remember, will address how many chairs, who should put out. I mean, those are all things that the beach ordinance will address. Condition 18, again, them giving us an easement to build a potential beach walk legally is a benefit, in my opinion. I don't see why we would say, please don't give us property to do what we need to do. So that to me is a positive. 22G, them giving us a 15 feet along the sandy beach, regardless if they have signs that say private property or not. The moment this gets approved with this condition, they're agreeing to allow the public to not just walk on the high water mark, but to walk 15 feet landward of that, which I think is a big deal. I think that's a good thing as well. These are just my opinions.
Yep,
but
no, please continue.
if you all see that something is wrong with these, then maybe the message is just, we reviewed ABC and we agree.
What do you believe happens elsewhere on the property, which was the question from staff,
I missed
On the
first
beach.
part of that, sorry.
with regard to G? You know, there was also the question of like wristbands. So everyone would be wearing wristbands except the residents.
Not part of this, not part of the conditions, right? That's the beach ordinance thing.
Save it for then.
We don't talk about wristbands in this condition. Again, that's more of a beach ordinance regulation, which they've already agreed to comply with if this does get approved.
So you're saying don't use conditional use as an opportunity, even if someone's going from 30 to 75 units per acre, to provide any extra protections for the beach in that scenario? That the extra protections that should be provided for conditional use when going to that extreme is basically to get a 15-foot beach access and it's to get is to get what's here, not to try to put any controls in regarding the number of people or the number of chairs or the other expectations.
But that's the beach ordinance.
But, yeah,
That
but-
sounds like a can of worms to me.
It may be.
I just think there's a different route, because code compliance is different. Conditional use, remember, just generally speaking, not speaking on a specific project, what they're asking for is a use. I want to use my property to build this high and have this many units, period, right? That's what they're asking for. They're asking to be granted the use. Once they get granted the use, if they do, someone will move to site plan approval, or they will have a full-on site plan based on what's given to them, and that will be approved administratively. And I think there may be another neighborhood meeting. I mean, there's other things, but the beach ordinance itself, when it comes to how to limit wristbands and alcohol and cabanas and chairs, again, that's going to be a different avenue.
But the condition,
They're required to give one beach access point. I believe they gave us 3. I'll have to look at the, but
Well, that's in here.
I do think the public access easement along the high water mark is an addition to what they're required to do. That was something that was negotiated with the city manager. I think that's a benefit to the city. The more we do this, the less likely we'll have to do a customary use along the property, which is a very drawn-out process.
so then I guess a note should be that the resolution should include more information about the additional beach access points. Because I don't see those in the resolution,
There's a
unless
chart.
you do.
Yeah, it's part of the overall packet.
Which we
Right.
don't have in front of us.
No, but I'm saying the resolution doesn't.
It's 888 pages, that would have been.
No, I know, but the resolution what separates what's in the resolution versus the packet? Why are certain things of importance in the resolution, but the beach access points are not in the resolution, for instance? Would we want the beach access points to be in the resolution?
I mean, they are. There's 22C, there's 22D, there's 22G, there's 18, there's 15. I mean, there's a lot of beach access terminology in the condition.
Okay, that one says both. Okay, you mentioned a third one, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So I guess what I was getting at was that I viewed it that it was a special case when you're allowing a property to go from 30 units to 75 units, that was a time to try to put in conditions to make special protections from the beach. You're saying no, treat it like just any other property.
And do it through,
And is that
and do it through the beach ordinance.
Right, so there's no special protection, just do it like a regular
You may
beach
be
ordinance.
missing my point.
We should do the beach ordinances right.
Hold on.
We did use this as an opportunity based on the conditions I just laid out. They're not required to give us a egress, ingress along the mean high water line, but we added it in here. They're not required to give us 3 beach access points. They're only required 1, but we got them to do 3.
True.
Right? I mean, these are things that we've already done to preserve the public's use of the beach and to gain access to the beach.
Actually,
So we have used this as an opportunity. I just want to make that clear. We have.
all right, so maybe we should talk at least about the third one, because the language in the third one is totally wishy-washy. I don't mean to get in the weeds, but we talk about maybe the city will ask them to do the third one. It's that northern access point. Maybe we'll ask you to combine with the C-Mark, maybe we won't. We'll decide later. I think that's the third one you're referring to.
That one it's more legal than it is. If the applicant owned the property, they would give it to us, but they don't. The C-Mark has an easement there, which goes, I believe, 4 feet further than their property line. So there's other legal documents in play here that we don't control.
Right, so that, I think that's the third one you're referring to? Because we're not really asking
So
for the third
essentially,
one.
it's one of those things where, like, if the city is ever granted that 4-foot easement area, then the applicant's willing to expand the beach access point to include that 4 feet, but they can't control the fact that it's not theirs.
I still think that we should be asking for the Serrata portion of at the north end.
We are.
But it says in the plan, we're deciding later.
What condition?
It's buried in the 800 pages, but,
32.
okay.
As in the one you're referring to.
Yeah, in the case the city chooses not to expand, I mean, why won't the city choose to expand?
Because like I just said, it's not our property.
No, but why don't we just still have the Serrata do the northern access point? I think that right now is the northernmost access point available south of Upham. That's really important.
It says expand the existing beach access point, right?
But-
So there's going to be an access point there, but if we ever, for some reason, don't ask me how, but if we get the easement from Seymour, and we get granted that authority, and we get that an additional 4 or 5 feet, all they're saying is that we'll ask them to expand it, and they will.
But even if we have to be a separate path, why don't we have Serrata give us the path? Even if we can't combine with the stupid little path that Seamark has, which is so narrow, it's a tragedy. Why aren't we just going to have Serrata give us the path that they have? That would be my recommendation, that Serrata should give us the path. And then, they don't have to put a fence at the north end of it. If Seamark has a path, so be it. But at least we'll have a path through the Serrata at the north end. That's our northernmost path, south of Upham.
Am I hearing wrong? There's already a path, and the path is going to stay?
There's a path at Seamark that's extremely narrow.
And the path is going to stay. The only difference is if we ever get the easement area that we don't
We can
have.
make it wider.
I don't know how else.
But
you're asking for a
Serrata's not
wider
giving,
path.
Serrata is not being asked to make a path at the northern end. The city is deciding later.
There's
There's
already a path, the path is going to stay, and you're saying there should be a wider path.
Where is there a path on Serrata's property? The path I know of is on Seamark's property. I am asking that the city make a path on Serrata's property. That's what I'm requesting. They're saying that Serrata doesn't want, the path on Serrata's property, they don't want to open up to everyone. I'm asking that Serrata open up a path.
respectfully, they are agreeing to do what we need them to do, essentially, when we make the request.
And I am requesting that we make the request.
They will comply.
Yeah, so I guess it's not an issue for the Serrata, it's a request for the city that we make the request.
So to your point, it's captured in this because it's on the city to ask for it, and when we do, they're agreeing to provide it.
But we're tying it to what the
There's other things that need to go into this, member Kurtzman. There's like title work. I need to figure out where the easement is, who owns it. It's not as easy as just saying, oh, I think the Seamark owns it. I'd like to see something. I need to do some legal research there.
But
determine where it came, who granted it, so on and so forth, because members of the public have always believed that's a public beach access point.
you're referring to the one at the Seamark though, correct?
The one abutting the property lines, correct?
Right, I'm saying, I don't want to be tied to that. I'm saying regardless, let's just have the Seamark give us a path.
Serrata.
I'm sorry, the Serrata, sorry, thank you. I'm saying just have the Serrata give us a path, regardless of what you find out about the Seamark.
Okay, how does the board feel about that?
More paths, the better.
Sure.
Right now, they're agreeing to 3 paths. Remember, they're only required 1. They're agreeing to 3 public beach access points and an ingress/egress along the main high water line, so 2 of those access points and the ingress/egress, they're not required by our code or comp plan to do, but they're agreeing to it.
Well, you're saying they would have to be doing this anyway if we asked them, so we're just saying let's ask them and not make it contingent on this deed research that you were going to have to do.
We're not required to give them the extra rooms they want.
Yeah, 2 hotels they're building.
Again, let's just keep this conversation directed to the beach if we could.
Yeah.
Okay, so it seems like, from what I'm hearing, there's a consensus that 15 is good, 18 is good, 22, C, D, and G are good, and then 32, the board would like to clarify.
Yeah. So just please just move ahead and do it.
And all we're going to get, before my silence is taken as a yes, all we're asking for is, because there's already a path that's not on the proposed property. You're asking for a path to be on the other side of the property line,
On the proposed property, on the Serrata property.
on the other side of the property line, because the current path is not on their property. You're saying expand it into their property, over the property line.
Have something on the Serrata property, with or without a fence, their choice. And they're welcome to put a fence on either side of the property line, I don't care where. Either side of the property line.
And it's my legal opinion that condition already says that,
But it doesn't have to be contingent on
So they're,
expanding the other access point.
so you're,
it's really not
Matthew,
contingent.
you're saying, you're saying 32 says if we ask for it, they'll expand the path onto their property.
Correct, and I'll read it just for the last sentence. If the city chooses to expand the beach access prior to building permit issuance for Hotel 1, the applicant shall be required to permit and construct the additional beach access area on the applicant's property.
Yeah, this gives us what we want. I don't know why we're
I mean,
spinning this.
Right, I mean, without reducing the landscaping, I mean, that's pretty clear to me.
Yep.
Yep.
This gives us, now we can work with, hey, city, we recommend you doing this.
Right.
But this says what you want.
Right, and
So
there's
we
no
agree with
reason,
this. So we agree with 32.
and there's no reason for them to be pushing back and saying they're already giving us so much. What you're saying, for all intents and purposes, they're already expecting to give it to us. We're just asking, don't,
Well, contingent on
It's there.
it doesn't need to have any contingencies.
being
Thank you.
approved, right? I mean, but yes, it's there. I think that
Thank you for
We don't have to
clarifying.
expand the beach access, we just need to create a new beach access.
Widen.
It doesn't have to be expanded or widened, it could be a new one.
Sure. But this says if the city chooses it, they will do
We
it.
can even create a separate one.
So is there any of these that we disagree with now? We've gone through them. So we agree with all of them.
We agree, right.
Do we want somebody to go to the meeting tonight saying, we, the beach committee, agree with we agree with these numbers?
I think Matt could carry that. Couldn't you, Matt?
I agree.
All right.
Yeah, either one, or although I think we should still clarify that 32 is that we want to, it's okay to say we even
But that's
clarify to
the
create a
city.
separate one is okay too.
But that's to the city, not to,
Correct.
yeah.
Correct.
So should I withdraw my second to that motion to make things kosher?
1 second, clerk we did vote on that motion, correct?
Yeah, we've already
Yeah,
done
that's
the motion.
correct.
We can still go and say we agree.
Yeah, I think we should. I think
I will still be there, but if I don't, and you can,
Do you want to get up and say we agree with these numbers?
yeah, I have no problem saying that, other than I would clarify, we want to request the city create a special beach access if they can't expand it, the existing one, for 32. And not add any other conditions. Not asking that. But you can do that, Matt, if that works.
I can do what?
You could be our representative to state this if that.
Unfortunately, I won't be at the meeting today.
Oh, okay. Wow. All right.
Rebecca, do we want to
Fine.
step back and say we're not going to send a representative?
No,
No, I would like to have a representative.
I'm
We
fine.
agreed to everything.
Yeah.
The points that you took out of this 800 something, and I have not read the 800, but we just reviewed all the points that you brought out. We all think they're good.
Yeah. I was trying to add some some things to their tool belt. It sounds though that the popular consensus here was wait for the ordinance to address it and don't put in special beach rules for increased
Member Kurtzman, you
capacity.
keep saying that, and I keep trying to clarify that is not the case. I don't know how else to say it. You've mentioned that 3 times now.
Well, we're asking for extra land. You asked, we got extra land in paths, we got extra land, but we did not put in any extra special, what I would refer to as rules or conditions with regard to how many chairs or different kind of requirements that I was trying to refer to. That's what I'm getting.
Yeah, but we put the reference to the beach ordinance, which will include everything that you're saying.
For all properties, not just them.
Whatever you want to say, by connection, they will be required to comply with whatever the beach ordinance says once it's approved, which will include everything that you're talking about.
But, okay, will they be treated as one hotel or 3 hotels? Will they have 3 kinds of chairs or 1 kind of chair? I mean, it's 3 it's 1 lot. Will 1 lot be treated as 1 lot, or will 1 lot be treated as 3 lots?
It is 1 zoning lot.
So the ordinance will address whether 1 zoning lot will have 3 types of chairs versus 1 type of chair? Is that what you're thinking?
Potentially. You guys will definitely have a say in it, so just note that for a future date when we discuss the beach ordinance.
Okay.
I'm just here, I'm the legal tool to put things in writing, but it's really going to be you and the commission on what you want it to say.
I mean, at that point, the Hampton Inn will have their chairs, and the Marriott will have their chairs, and okay, but I was just trying to address it up front, is what I was getting at. Does anybody have any comment when you think about that in that way? Okay, fine.
Okay, so,
Where do we want to go? I mean, I'm sorry,
no, that's okay.
I'm taking,
I
I yield to the chair.
Just to clarify on my vote, I'm a huge fan of the public trust doctrine, and the seas are ours, basically, most of the time. But I also recognize somebody's private property and their ability to do things on their property. And some of this stuff, I feel comfortable with 15, that we would be able to deal with all those subjects through the beach ordinance, period.
I agree with that.
That's how I feel about it.
Okay,
Reasonable.
fine,
Okay.
very good.
So, are we moving on now to 5? Is it 5 we're looking at?
Well, before we go to the
Okay.
surveys and deeds, so have you all designated someone to appear on your behalf? Or is that still happening, or?
I had said that I was expecting to still be there, but it's,
I
join?
have a conflict.
Yeah, I won't
I have
be
a hard
there either.
conflict.
So that,
Is Jennifer going to be there? Matt, do you know?
Unfortunately, most likely she'll be somewhere because she's going to help with coordinating. We have people staged all over City Hall because we're expecting quite a bit of citizens showing up. So yeah, I don't know, but I just figured Member Kurtzman was probably going to be there. But
we could send a note.
if you all agree with the conditions and you feel like it's important for
Now that we agree that we all agree, it changes.
Yeah, what if we did like an email or something?
Okay.
Trying
From
to
the
meet
chair.
in the middle here. It's more impactful if someone steps up. I would say it's more impactful if you guys had concerns to show up, but with you saying we're good with all the beach-related conditions,
Yeah,
I don't know, that's a tough one.
not as important.
Or we choose that we reach out to each of our appointing
That's
officers.
That's a great
And
idea.
let's do it that way, instead of showing up. We reviewed the main sections today, especially with the beach ordinance, them agreeing to that and adding, 3 access points. We agree with everything that's in there.
Yeah, we agree, yeah.
We'll be able to
I would make my clarification about 32, but it's just a one-liner, it's
Yep.
a small change.
John, can you do one line?
You know me.
So we're agreeing to go, instead of a public comment, we're going to reach out to each of our appointees.
That would be the best vehicle, I think, at this point, rather than
Does
take up time.
Everyone agree with that?
Yeah, sure.
And now, Member Kurtzman, you have your 3 minutes to talk about anything you want as a citizen.
Well, yeah, separate from this. That's nothing to do with this. Yeah. All right, so that's 5B. 5C, can we move on to 5C? Or you're at the floor, you're at the gavel.
Yes, we are moving to 5C. Thank you.
Deeds and surveys. At the January City Commission meeting, the new commissioners were going through the list of professionals, and Matthew, you could probably explain better what exactly they were allocating. It was something of like where, I know the mayor commented that, gee, we just allocated $3.5 million, but it wasn't really allocating it, but they were picking certain professional firms. Kimley Horn to do this, and a certain firm that was expert in surveys and title work, and another firm that was good at other things, and Mike Clark mentioned, oh, this firm they have all the history of all the titles and deeds. They go way back with the city. They have records that nobody else has. Like, wow, that's great, because we've been trying to get a handle on a lot of the surveys and deeds along the beach, because things keep happening, where people say, I used to drive my car right up to the beach, get out of my car, and now there's a gate. What happened? I can't get there anymore. That's been some people call it implicit easement, some people call it a prescriptive easement. Some people say I thought it was in my deed, but now I can't find it. It was in the Great Fire of the St. Pete Beach City Hall, whatever. So the hope is that maybe some of that information could be found. And then there was a project, and I printed a document that I think Jennifer put together and Alex Ray a while back, where they had a map where they were trying to show where they were planning on having beach access points. And then a document I put together, sort of where something about easements, and then on the back, something from Google Maps, both in the satellite view and the regular view, where they have certain streets in white and certain streets in gray. And in gray, you can sort of tell there are driveways, and white appears to be the map streets, like the real streets. But some of them are where people have said, hey, that's where I used to drive to the beach. But those are now sort of fenced off. And so those are sort of the ones where certainly people are, we want to sort of hear more about what do the deeds say. But so the question, or maybe the motion is that we request the City Commission to ask the professional and the staff to put together the surveys from Upham to the county beach, where there currently are there appear to be no currently recognized beach access points, and collect the deeds west of Gulf Boulevard, which we believe the city recently did do this exercise internally, but also work with this professional firm to make sure they have all of them, including the exception pages, and gather them and make them available to the Beach Stewardship Committee for review. And then separate from that, I should just mention that I've seen, and from even some of the submissions, that some of the hotels have included in like their application for cabanas, they included their exception page. And on their exception page, it said that something like, for instance, Duke Energy has the right for power, cable company has the right for cable, and the public has the right to use the beach. And that's good things to know. Other applications and documents I've seen posted don't include that exception page. But if we look at our own deeds, I'm sure we all have exception pages. So we really want to see those exception pages to know what's going on the beach.
Well, is the city not contemplating doing that?
Well, I don't know. I haven't seen it.
Oh,
I mean, they put them together, but what we often hear is, oh, the hotel owes everything to the high water mark, and that's why we need to do X. But then when you see the exception page, you go, well, yes, but it says the public has the right to use the beach. So let's just know that when we're examining. I mean, when I first heard that we were telling the hotels that they had to bring their chairs in at night, I was sort of like, well, I wouldn't want to hear that I had to bring my chairs at night from my pool. Why are we asking that of the hotel? But then I started looking and I said, well, they're not even paying tax for the beach. So let me weigh all the pros and cons. And so it's important to recognize, and if someone's being kicked off the beach but it's a public thing, then we just want to know where things stand. So that's the motivation.
Matt, do you know, has the surveyor been selected, or the team that's going to do that? Is that already in the works?
Yeah, there's a few things here, if I may, Chair. Thank you. What Member Kurtzman was referring to is called CCNA contracts. So it's Competitive Consultants Negotiation Act. It's a statute that local governments have to abide by when soliciting certain contractors, if you will, planning services, surveying, architectural, some of the engineering, some of the more technical things. The city's actually in the process of resoliciting those, so the people we've had under contract for the last 3 years, we're actually going to resolicit and pick some new ones. Right now, our surveyor, I believe, is George F. Young.
Okay.
So that's kind of where that process is. We have to prepare solicitations, people have to supply, we pick, commission decides on who we go with in the next round. As for what the city's done, I mean, probably the last 2 years, when prior city manager was here, we started developing a property owner database, if you will, when it comes to city-owned property, which included beach access points. And so I know there's an internal, I don't know what you want to call it, share drive or something, that designates some of these public facilities and some of these beach access points and some of the ownership on the beach that we've already started. I don't know how far that is, but I know I've seen it before, so that may be a good starting place. But to do realistically what Member Kurtzman is wanting to do, which I don't think is a bad idea holistically, I mean, you're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars in survey work, so that would definitely need to be something that's approved by the commission.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess knowing where we stand would, I guess knowing what we have so far or what's missing would be maybe even a good starting point then.
Yeah, so why don't, I don't know if Jennifer's there, but I can work with, whenever the next meeting is, although if the workshop's related to the resolution, then maybe we wait for the next regular meeting of the beach stewardship, but we can add the sheet that we have at the city. I say it's a sheet, but it's like it's an Excel spreadsheet where you can click on hyperlinks that take you to certain recorded documents, right? So it kind of delineates certain things. I know that's there, so we can always add that for discussion.
Okay. And by the way, I just want to clarify, I am in no way believing that we want anarchy on the beach. I believe that what we're doing with the hotels has been very appropriate. I think that the way that hotels offer chairs and rent them out, and then people can rent those chairs, and in exchange, the hotel takes care of that plot of land and needs to make sure that people don't think that they could just walk up to a chair and put their own umbrella right in front of a rental chair, or if someone's, in the business of, selling, drinks on the beach, that someone else shouldn't just think they should walk up with a cooler and plunk their cooler in front of, other, guests that are paying for drinks. They need to be able to preserve the right that they're running a business in those areas. And that's the exchange that happens. I mean, even if they're not paying taxes in those areas, the idea is that they are managing that area. That's the cooperation with the city. But we're not extinguishing the usual and customary practices that the beaches are public. And it's just, I'm trying to preserve that idea that it's, usual and customary that people have always, used the beach, but at the same time, the hotels and the property owners take care of their property, and they need the ability to have decorum, and everybody's happy, and people, can't be idiots and think that they just can walk into a restaurant with their own food. And we all have to live together, and it seems to be good, and I don't want to rock that boat, but it's just important to know what's what.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? All right. Matt, thank you for being with us, and Ayako too.
We just had that public comment, the discussion from Rich Malinowski that was forwarded to all of us.
Oh, yeah.
There was one printed. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, down at the bottom.
Yeah, so on the back side of that page is basically the questions that he had. Let me work sort of backwards first with it and address what he had asked us in November, back in November, with regards to the handicap parking in South Passagrow. That's at the bottom of the paragraph there. So I did a just quick analysis, it just looked at what we had available down at Passagrow. We basically have 17 handicap spots available between 22nd Avenue all the way down to the 1st. The bulk of them are situated at points along there where we have handicap beach access. For example, on 22nd Avenue, where we have the blue Moby mat laid out, we have 4 handicap parking spots right there. The next access point really for handicap would probably be around Paradise Grill, because we have the ramps on either side of the paint. So there we have, again, 5 handicap parking spots. Also remember that we do provide 2 beach water wheelchairs there, free for the public to use as well. And finally, down at First Avenue, where we actually have the sand walk out to the pier, there'd potentially be another handicap access point. We do have 5 handicap parking spots there as well. And then a few spread out in between. So it's a total of 17 all up. I mean, you think that's sufficient? I believe. We don't have one at every avenue. That's not the way we have it, but we just kind of concentrate them where the handicap can actually access the beach. Okay? And then further up, he's come up with some new questions here with regards to the city's beach renourishment plan for Passagrow. I'm not aware what the long-term plan is for that. I mean, we just had the county do the sand renourishment for us. And I don't know what the plan is long-term beyond that. Whether it's a county focus. Yeah, and I'm sort of encouraging, thinking maybe our ocean reliance pay, looking in that sort of direction might be a better long-term solution. So I don't know what the beach renourishment plan is for Paso Grill. I guess I can check with Public Works on that. They have put in temporary crossovers to the beach, as you've seen the rope and, you know, this
Well,
rope
it
across,
would
yeah.
be productive to just pluck some sea grapes and other indigenous plantings along that dune. Just the seagrass is not going to hold it together.
Probably, likely, yeah. I agree with that.
Our contact to find out about that would be in Pinellas County, correct, as far as the plants they put there and stuff?
Right, because that was a county,
Right.
COs,
Funded.
aren't they?
yeah, they're just COs there.
That's the,
It's the main.
COs is the, if plant COs and then go back, plant more COs and go, right, those have the deepest for sand.
Yeah.
Sea grapes are actually better for mangroves and in water. Again, I do a lot of this. So I think dunes, the more COs we can put in there, the better. That's what I've been told. Now, I'm not a PhD or scientist, but that's probably something we should ask.
Yeah,
We had huge success with snow fencing
Yeah.
north.
and is that just the flexible
Yeah.
blue
Gri-
grid mesh kind of sort of thing? That, we did have some of that, because you could see it when the dunes got washed away, it kind of exposed the old,
Yeah.
Um,
It's pretty traditional,
right,
but that's a vulnerable area.
yeah. So, I'm not sure if they put that in there before they piled the more sand or renourished it again?
I don't know.
I don't recall.
I know there was a lot of plantings done back, I think in '85, on the north, I'm just talking on the north end of Paso Grill, and they're still there.
Yeah, they're doing very well.
Well, yeah, there was, at one point, there was nothing there, and then those dunes grew very
Mhm.
nicely,
Mhm.
mainly because they were renourishing down the other end, and the littoral drift goes that way,
Yeah.
so the sand comes in.
Okay. Yeah, and as far as the survival rate of the plants, I don't have any sort of information. I don't know if anybody's even looking at that or
Well,
counting.
A natural habitat needs a variety of plants. Single cropping is not a good idea for farming or for.
Right. So, I mean, those things I can still sort of ask questions about and see if I can get some more information on those areas
That would be,
that for our next meeting.
no,
But I hope I've addressed the handicap parking,
very well.
access points that we have, and kind of feel that they're sufficient. I just did want to clarify one thing before, if we do end. So are we, as a committee, are you happy then to sort of ask the ocean rescue people to come back, obviously with the data that we requested as far as the coastal resiliency, and maybe form a little bit of a study to ultimately present maybe to the commission? Is that the door? Do you want them to come back here first and present to us again before we decide?
I would like to see another presentation myself. I mean, she was good. She provided a
Okay,
lot of.
so a little more refined, like this is where in St. Pete Beach we think this would work,
Yeah,
specific?
That would be interesting.
Okay,
I like that. And we could have some input too, maybe what we think might
Yeah.
be something worthwhile.
okay.
Hey, I just thought of something also, because, you know, these questions about the dunes and the Paso Grill and everything, I was thinking that, you know, how we have not been CC'd on anything about beach nourishment, but maybe, have you?
No, not really.
Because I was thinking maybe we could model what we hear based on the kind of things you hear, but
Yeah,
the answer is no. Okay.
That'll be a part of the workshop.
That would be that. Okay, I'm sorry. I thought I could jump ahead.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any more questions or thoughts? Matt? You good?
I can speak on, just briefly on beach nourishment. I've been really spearheading this for the city. It's been a lot of conversations and meetings, and when it comes to federal funding, I don't know how familiar you guys are with the project, but the Army Corps changed an interpretation recently where they used to allow for temporary access easements from places like Silver Sands and other beach communities, and out of nowhere they said that we want perpetual easements, which has caused a big concern. we're better off than most cities in that people like Indian Rocks, and I mean, they need hundreds of easements, and we only need 3, right? From the Silver Sands is the only thing preventing us from meeting this new requirement. So I've been working with Silver Sands attorney, general counsel, trying to see if there's something that we can do permit-wise to try to move this along. I did see a congressional memo that went to I believe, Congress in D.C. from a candidate here in Pinellas County. Her name's escaping me. I did speak to her, and so there is a push from Florida to try to have the federal government step in and make the Army Corps change their interpretation to go back to temporary easements, because I've already gotten confirmation from Silver Sands that they'll sign a temporary easement tomorrow to allow for federal funding, right? So the concept behind it is you can't use federal funding to nourish private beach, right? That's just generally speaking. So that's why they want these easements, is because what comes along with the easement is language that says the public can use it. And most private property owners, as you can imagine, are saying, you know, no, I paid for this. I don't want people just coming across it. It's really a miscommunication. I had a meeting with the Army Corps. I set a meeting with the Army Corps, Silver Sands, a couple months back up in the upstairs City Hall. We tried to just get everyone in a room to come to an agreement. Pretty positive conversation. Hasn't really resulted anywhere, because now that this memo has gone up to Congress, I'm assuming Silver Sands is waiting, because if the policy changes, then there's no need for them to give us a perpetual easement, or the county one. But just know that we're working on it, you know, trying to figure out. And ironically, I mean, not ironically, but we're in a way better situation than any other beach community in Pinellas County, because we only need 3. Everyone else needs minimum of 20, maximum of 140. So you can assume how difficult that is to try to get single-family home owners to sign off on a perpetual easement. So I'll continue to keep the city updated, and you all as the Beach Stewardship Committee, but that's where we are right now.
Now, when they get these easements, is that traditionally what they call moving the erosion control line? Or what I've heard about this last round is that they're not just asking even for an perpetual easement for where they need now, that they're asking for perpetual easement for where they think they might need in 20 years.
Yeah.
Are they asking for something that they genuinely need right now of the Silver Sands in order to do the work? Or are they asking for something they might need even in the future that they don't even need right now?
Correct. It's in case. It's an in-case situation, like as needed. If we get a massive storm tomorrow, and because Silver Sands has they get the benefit of accretion, right? So there's erosion and accretion. Their sand is plentiful. Their beach is plentiful back there. They have a really good dune system too. But if something came in tomorrow and wiped away that entire area in the dune system, the federal government would not help us with beach nourishment, because we do not have the easements. If we had the easements, they would come in, they would mobilize within 2 weeks and replace everything that we have there. So what the county did is different. The county helped with Passive Row based on, I believe, penny for Pinellas or bed tax money. They used something. It was, I mean, I think total project for the beach was like 60 million, not just for us, but for all beach communities. But they did a good job of replacing the dunes. So yeah, it isn't as needed, worst case scenario. But if you wait until it happens, then it's too late, and that's kind of been my argument the whole time. But yeah, that's where we are.
Yeah, because traditionally you wait until you have an emergency, and then you say, well, I'll give up my right to the sand you're giving me. But what's happening here now is the Army Corps is saying, you need to give us land that's fine right now if you ever want us to replenish it. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that was their position. If you don't sign the perpetual easements, we won't replenish your land. And if you need us, don't call us.
That's like FEMA saying, you got to give us your house now if you ever want insurance.
They will sometimes, don't worry.
All right, thank you. It's a new philosophy.
Well,
Okay, there's no other
nothing
bit.
further, Chair.
Okay, thank you Matt, very much. think we can adjourn this meeting.
Yes, oh.
Thank you.
Great. What a deal.